He kōna e purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
When I was little and used to go to the river, at the river you'd get all the stones that had been polished smooth by the water, and they were different colours. And as a child, I really wanted a microscope, but it was $200 in the 70s, so that was beyond our means. But I used to walk past, when you were a kid and you'd walk past a window and you'd kind of drag your fingers along the window and love was something inside the shop. Yeah. I used to do that with the microscope. Like I love you. So I always loved science, but there were no Māori in science. And none of the science that we did resonated with me as a young kōtero Māori. Like, where were my role models? Where was an Indigenous way of looking at, questioning and understanding the world? It was non-existent.
Kia ora, nau mai haramai ki te ao hurahanga. Hello and welcome to Our Changing World. Ko klek and kamen tēnei. Professor Kura Paul-Burke is a trailblazer. She's the country's first Waihi Māori marine professor, but there's another role she takes seriously. And that's being a long-time member of the Pukehina Marae Committee. Both of these jobs are a perfect fit for her research project into restoring the quality of the Waihi estuary. Once it was a thriving food source, but Kura says there now seems to be a permanent toxic shellfish warning sign. She's leading a research project to turn things around with seagrass, or as the locals call it, nana, which she hopes will improve the health of the ecosystem. Tauranga-based producer Justine Murray heads to Makatu in the Eastern Bay of Plenty.
It's a windy day and there's a cold snap at Pukehina. I'm wearing my bulky puffer jacket and gumboots while Nick, a qualified diver and a new member to the team, is dressed a bit more casual.
Shorts, you're just looking at you, making me cold.
Oh yeah, you're wearing shorts. Oh my goodness.
Right now everyone's got on gumboots and or booties, like dive booties, because you're going to get wet out there. Most of us have on either shorts or like kind of wetsuit bottom pants, or the most fantastic hunting and fishing pants, because they're warm and can soak up the water real easy. They're quick drying.
I'm here at Waihi Estuary to learn more about a restoration project that combines Western science and mātauranga Māori. For years, local hapu, Ngāti Whakahemo, have seen firsthand the declining ecological state of the estuary, and it's down to what's happening on land. Forestry, dairy farming and horticulture has put pressure on the water catchment. That's led to increased sedimentation, pathogens and declining water quality. But the estuary is also a mahinga kai. Tuangi or cockles is a popular food source here, but it's under threat. Dr. Kura Paul-Burke is determined to find solutions through restorative actions. So, before I head out, let's meet the team.
Our field leader, Joe Burke. We have our PhD student and one of our scientific divers, Megan Ranapia. We have one of our rangatahi, our taiohi, te amai, and then we have one of our other field workers and also a diver. So today we're going to go out it's low tide, and we're going to go out and do some tuangi or some cockle survey so we can go back to the marae and tell our whānau where the cockles are, how many are there, and the sizes of them too.
We're going to head back to Waihi Estuary soon, but first, back in a nice warm office space in downtown Tauranga, Kura and I meet up for a chat about the research project Tāwharautia Te Wahapu or Waihi.
Tāwharautia means to protect. So protect the Waihi estuary in the Western Bay of Plenty with our iwi of Ngāti Whakahemo and the Pukehina Marae Committee, of which I am the secretary. And so for generations, our people of Ngāti Whakahemo have raised grave concerns about the declining health of the estuary, because for us, Waihi estuary is a mahinga kai, or a food basket. If you go down to the estuary today and people are harvesting at low tide, that's why we go. We don't go to the estuary to play. It is not a place of recreational activity for Ngāti Whakahimu and mainly and for a lot of Māori around the country with their estuaries. It is the place that we get kai in the same places, in the same way that our tipuna did, that we hopefully our mokopuna will. But our estuary is one of the top 5 degraded estuaries in the country. The Waihi estuary, we have high nitrogen, high phosphorus and E. coli levels. Most times of the year we have shellfish toxicity alerts, almost permanent signs. Don't
summer.
get your pipi.
Yes.
Exactly, same as us. And that's because of ourselves. So something needed to be done and we needed to be the ones to lead that charge. So if you look at the catchment or the land, the whenua that surrounds our estuary, it's around 35,000 hectares, give or take. And of that 35,000 hectares, 25,500 are privately owned, and 5,000 hectares are owned by Māori. So the activities on the land reach far beyond us as a small hapu iwi of Ngāti Whakahimu. And what happens is all the practices on the land, forestry, farming and horticulture, all those activities run into the 4 freshwater contributors or little awa that run into our estuary and go straight into our estuary.
And part of protecting the estuary is by doing tohu surveys. That is simply reading and observing the signs. What are the indicators? Like what times the toria or oyster catcher bird eats, the growth of tuangi and the seagrass or nana.
When the tide goes out and you see this kind of limp-looking grass, that's nana or seagrass, and they are a super important species in our estuary. Did you know that baby snapper, like little tiny ones, that they grow up in, that they seek out seagrass? And because it provides food as well as shelter and protection, and then as the snapper grows, then it goes out to sea. So nana or seagrass are really important habitats, not only for little baby fish, but also for our tuangi and our cockles, because you might generally find that the tuangi are best to pick around the seagrass because the environment has better nutrients for the cockles to eat.
Seagrass or nana is one of 50 flowering species in the world. But sadly, the nana has disappeared over time.
In 1943, I think there was just under 80 hectares of seagrass in Waihi estuary. Hard to imagine now, because today we have 2 very tiny beds, and together they are less than a hectare remaining of seagrass. Seagrass or nana is a tohu of water quality. Remember our straightened canals? Or that paru off the land coming into our canals, driving straight into the estuary, with that bringing poor water quality that knocks everything over. So our declining seagrass and nana is a tohu or indicator of bad water quality.
And do the nana and tuangi live side by side, so to speak?
Well, the tuangi live, they're kind of like, when you go to remember in the old days you used to go to a disco and you get the people in the middle of the dance floor or the cool people, so that's the nana.
Right.
And then the tuangi kind of hang around the edges. And that suits them best because the sea floor works best for them there. They get a good kai there.
So let's head back to Waihi estuary.
Transit line.
Okay, cool.
Let's go and do our tuangi surveys. Where are they? How many are there? Their abundance and their sizing. And then after that, we'll do our nana surveys as well.
PhD student Megan Ranapia leads the karakia.
Unuhia atura ngā kōrero o te wānanga. Unuhia te hautapu o ngā āriki. Whakairea e rongo, ka whakamaua kia tīna.
Tīna.
Unie uie
Dai kie.
So when we survey our nana, we're just going to run a transect parallel with the shore, and we're going to place down quadrats in 5-metre intervals and just record cover of the nana, just to understand sort of the abundance of it and the current state of the nana. Yeah, so what we can see in front of us is actually the fawns, I guess, of the nana. It's compared to other beds, this one's probably a bit more sparse, but it's still awesome to see that it's still present in the estuary, which is very cool.
As we walk and chat along the shoreline, the nana is plentiful. It kind of looks like floating blades of grass.
The tuangi like to live generally around the periphery, like on the edges of the nana, because the water quality is better, the kai is better, and it's more plentiful because the nana also brings in lots of other species who like to hide in it, live off it, etc. So it's a good place for tuangi to hang out because assumingly they has good kai.
We walk about 100 metres up the shoreline. Megan Ranapia, Nick Chalmers and Te Kura Paul-Burke measure up a space along the surface.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to put down a quadrat, and all a quadrat is a square, and it's the size of a quarter of a metre, so 0.25 metre square, and then the quadrat we're going to put down at the 5 metre mark, and then we're going to we're going to look at the seagrass or the nana just to see the state of it first. What we can see just on top of the mud or the sediment is that we've got quite a number of tuangi of different sizes, mainly small. We have other predatory shellfish like it's called a zikamantis, and it munches out on heaps of stuff. We're also looking at our nana to see how long are the blades of the nana, and potential how many of them are in our little quarter metre square.
Megan then takes a sample using the core cylinder, and it's not as simple as it looks.
We're pushing it into the soft mud. It's quite hard work because if a showers or anything gets in the way, it's hard to push it down. And then we're going to bring it up, and we should have a good 20 centimetres of mud. And then we're going to push that mud into a sieve, and we're going to wash away all of the paru, all of the mud or the sediment, and to see what's left behind. And that will help us to better understand where our tuangi are, how many, but equally as important, their sizing.
Right. So the tuangi we see on the surface actually differs to the one below.
Yeah, because like tuangi like to burrow.
Yes.
And so what we want to know is like how many are there that we can't see. So we've tipped the sediment or the mud into a sieve, and then we've taken the sieve to the water, to the estuary, and just washed all that mud away, or that sediment away. And now we're going to go and count and measure how many tuangi we have.
Ka pai, tēnā koe kura.
So basically we're just sorting out the tuangi into various size classes, and it gives us an indication of if there's like recruitment, which is good to know if the site's still recruiting juvenile tuangi, and just get an understanding of sort of the size of the tuangi as well.
Did you say recruitment?
Recruitment. So yeah, recruitment of tuangi. So if there are baby tuangi coming into the area or into the estuary still. So if you get different size classes, that's actually a good indication that they're still breeding and that they're still settling in the harbour, which is what you want. So I see if there's these little ones. So you can get them a bit smaller than that.
Oh, that's tiny.
You can even get them probably a tenth of that size. You need a kind of a good eye for it.
Wow. It's like the size of a pea.
Yeah.
A rice grain.
A rice grain, yeah.
Rice grain.
Tuangi, the ones you may find in a supermarket or the ones that I've had the pleasure of eating, are a bit larger, maybe twice the size of a $2 coin. So to see this rice grain sized tuangi is pretty awesome. Again, the nana or seagrass plays a major part in the health of tuangi.
So we need our seagrass, our nana. We need it not only for tāmuri, for snapper, but also for terakihi, as well as all our shellfish like tuangi, and further up the estuary like our pipi, etc.
Do we get titiko out here?
So titiko are disappearing everywhere around.
Same with tauranga.
And all around. So, but we actually, as part of our mahi here, we've come across titiko, and we'll go and map them soon. Do mātauranga mapping, talking to the old people first, and then we'll go out and do what we're doing here with the tuangi.
So just to explain, titiko is a mud-flat snail. My family and I used to gather and eat these all the time in my childhood. But it's been years since I've had one. Titiko beds, certainly the ones that I know of in Tauranga, have declined. The research project Tāwharautia Te Wahapu o Waihi, led by Dr. Kura, involves tohu surveys, or understanding the connection between the water, the marine life and birds. Ngāti Whakahemo recognised the toria bird, or the oyster catcher, as one of those tohu. Now, these birds love to feast on tuangi and other small fish. So, basically, if the toria bird is around, then for them, it's kai time. In fact, on the morning of my visit to the estuary, Megan Ranapia and her friend Nick Chalmers had been out studying the toria.
We scanned the area and did counts of the toria. So there's two types. There's the variable toria, or oyster catcher, which is the full black one, and then the pied, which is the black and white one. And then once we do a scan, we also look for other bird species present in that area. And then after that, we do a focal follow, or what we call atatitiro. So we pick one of the toria birds, and then we just record their behaviours within a 5-minute count. And we're recording things like probing and pecking, so their handling of prey, or prey interactions, also interactions with their other bird species or the same species, and also just general behaviour like walking, preening and things like that. Yeah.
What can you surmise from your observations afterwards? Like, what kind of period are you looking at observing the toria?
So what we've noticed is toria feed, or when they feed, it's very tide dependent. So they strike during the low tide, which follows a whakatauki. Ka whate te tai, ka pau te toria. So this whakatauki talks about the toria striking when the tide or the water retreats. And we actually noticed that during our surveys, that they actually are very tidal dependent in terms of their feeding. And so their numbers increase and their activity increases, and because Waihi estuary, it kind of just does what it wants. So it actually took a while for the tide to retreat, but the toria actually knew exactly when to come, which was very cool to witness. Yeah.
Dr. Kura Paul-Burke describes this research project as a restoration action plan. The Waihi estuary covers an area of just over 3.3 kilometres, and some of the neighbouring canals contribute to its decline.
The four main awa or freshwater contributors are the Pokehina, the Pongakawa, the Kaikokopu and the Wharere canals, and their canals. That means that they have been straightened. Once upon a time, they would meander, like S-shape, down the whenua to the estuary. And when the rivers S-shape or meander, each time the water goes on a turn, some of the sediment falls out, and the paru falls out and stays at that turn. So by the time it gets to the estuary, the water is not as polluted as it could be. So when you straighten the rivers and make it a straight canal, it just goes straight from the land, gushes straight into the estuary. There's no filter or sieve or anything to protect the estuary. Hence the name Tāwharautia, protect our estuary.
There are three main components to the research project: the past, present and future.
The first thing we do is we talk with the old people, older than us people. So our aunties and our uncles and our nanny and karaua, our koro. So we ask them, when you were little, where did you used to go to get your tuangi? And who took you? If they were little, if they were children, that meant someone older took them, like their uncle, their auntie, their nanny, their koro, or their parents. So straight away you have two generations of information. Does that make sense?
Yep, it makes sense.
And then it comes to us, and that's 3 generations. And then we are also training our rangatahi, our taiahi, and that takes us to 4 generations of interconnected knowledge passing through of our estuary and the tuangi. This project is Mātauranga Māori led, firstly. So everything we've done is started with a Māori point of view, if you like. And then we bring in the marine science to come and assist, and then it goes back out, in and out, where it weaves in and out when we need it to. So in answer to your question, we do our mātauranga mapping with our old people, and then we go out with a handheld GPS, and this is a science part, even it's super fun, and we just walk around and we map the tuangi beds. We're just using science that makes sense to us to help us make decisions. We don't want, we want information to help us manage ourselves and our estuary. We're not looking for complex information that's not going to assist decision making.
Tāwharautia Te Wahapu o Waihi started as a project in July in 2022 and wraps up in December this year, made possible as part of the National Science Challenge.
Our Land and Water have been incredibly supportive, 100% behind a co-developed approach, so this project has been developed by Ngāti Whakehemo, for Ngāti Whakehemo, led by Ngāti Whakehemo, but for our estuary, in order to benefit not only ourselves, but also our neighbours as well, who are really supportive.
So, 1 year on, what are some of the findings?
We now know, based on the mahi that we've done in this project, we know exactly how big our tuangi and our seagrass beds are. And then that then gives us that, so the mātauranga kōrero with our old people, that was our baseline, our mātauranga baseline. Then we brought in the Western science and went and mapped the current state. So we know now if we did anything, have we increased the beds or have we decreased them? It gives us a firm boundary to go about our business as we try to look at restoring and, awhi our estuary.
So when we talked earlier, Kura, about the pollutants, is the Māori there? Does the Māori exist in the estuary at this point in time?
Yes. Our estuary is alive, right?
Yeah.
So we have hene moana and tangaro coming in at the mouth twice a day on the high tides, coming in, flushing out the estuary, and then draining it back out again. We have those 4 freshwater canals, They're still straightened, they're not the greatest, but they're coming into, so there's constant life there. But it could be better. So this project is all about restoration, it's all about our estuary, but in equal parts it's about ourselves, Ngāti Whakehemo, and connecting ourselves back to our estuary, especially for our rangatahi, our taiahi of tomorrow, because they're the ones who are going to lead the charge. So we want them to fall in love with their estuary. And your face makes me want to cry the way you did that. But that's what we want. But how, we talk about our youth and sometimes, they're kore this, but how are they going to know if we don't pave the way? We don't need to make it hard, we need to make it accessible.
Yes.
At the beginning of this kōrero, remember I talked about how there was no Māori science teachers?
Yes.
So this is it. This is about creating space for our rangatahi and our taiahi for tomorrow, our leaders of tomorrow, that they know their estuary. They'll walk in and go, I know the birds go, they do this, and their nana over there, and tuangi over there, and the pipis over there, or don't go over there, or whatever. And the only way they're going to know is by being out there.
And speaking of being out there, let's head back to Waihi Estuary. And during this year, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council announced a joint venture with iwi collective Te Wahapu o Waihi. Ngāti Whakehemo is part of this collective, and this joint venture means that 30 hectares of low-lying farmland will be returned to coastal wetland to help improve the ecological health of the estuary. So, it's good news.
So bringing together the 5 iwi collective, I think it was maybe about 18 months of us all working together, figuring it out. But we all have the same kaupapa. He oranga te wahapu, he oranga te iwi. And so we put in funding applications, and ourselves, the iwi also have put up kaupapa and funding as well. So it's a true collective for our estuary. Our iwi, te runano o Ngāti Whakahemo, as well as Whakauiki Maketu, Ngāti Pikiao, Ngāti Mākino and Tāpuika. And so the 5 iwi have come together and working in partnership with the Regional Council, and we're going to restore that entire 30 hectares back to wetland salt marsh as a korowai for our estuary, so that when all the paru comes down the awa, like ours are straight in canals, when all that sediment and paru comes towards our estuary, our wetland will help filter that out. So by the time the water reaches the estuary, it's cleaner than when it hit the wetland. So that mahi is like it's miharo.
And as Aotearoa celebrates matariki in their own region, I asked Dr. Kura about the importance of the maramataka, or the lunar phases, in her work.
All of our mahi, when we go out diving, we check the maramataka first. We know which are the best moon phases to dive before we even check the tides. And that's just from going out experience. And as Megan talked earlier about ka whate te tai, ka pau te tōrea, and so bringing together our lunar phases, maramataka with tohu, in order for us to better understand and care for our estuary.
Kia ora. And so would this spot in Maketu be ideal?
Absolutely. Like if you think Waihi, like he is to like he ika is to fish, and so fishing water. So absolutely. So we follow the maramataka. We try to find to inform not only like our daily lives, but the way that we conduct our rangahau for our moana.
I was talking with Dr. Rangi Mātamua the other day, Jack Thatcher in Tauranga. These are 2 men who have really championed wayfinding, matariki, stargazing, and you're in a position as a marine professor. How do you see that form of succession happening? And when you eventually want to hang up your cap, so to speak, are you confident that there are ones learning next to you?
Yes, and firstly, like Rangi Mātamua and Jack Thatcher, like I didn't even know what the kupu was to describe them and their mahi. But another thing that what they also do is they're inclusive. So they actually keep the kuaha open, the door open for everybody to come through, and the strength of not only their mātauranga, as tohunga, but also that they're so inviting of everyone to come, learn, participate, and grow in your own self. I am all about the taiao. I don't see myself in the same matamira as like those tohunga. For me, I am all about the rangatahi because they're hard case. They're funny, they're intelligent, they're innovative, and I learn from them. Tuakana taina and ako. So it's all about absolutely that. How can our taiohi, our rangatahi, learn about things if we don't take them there?
Nā mihi nui ki a ahorangi Kura Paul-Burke, Megan Ranapia hoki, no te whare wāngana o Waikato. Nā mihi hoki ki a Nick Joe Burke me te Amai Paul-Burke. Thanks to Professor Kura Paul-Burke and Megan Ranapia, both from the University of Waikato, and to Nick, Joe and Te Amai, who helped with recording on the day. And big thanks to Justine Murray, who produced this episode. Sound engineering was by Phil Benj, and Tim Watkin is the executive producer of podcasts and series at RNZ. Kia whaia I te au hurihanga I tētahi taupanga pai ake kia koe. Follow Our Changing World on your favourite podcast app. Kia kimihia tō mātau whārangi I parangi, rnz.co.nz/ourchangingworld. Kei pukamata me tihau hoki, at RNZ Science. Look for our website on the main RNZ page or find us on Facebook and Twitter. Te nā koe I whakarongo mai. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Claire Kincannon. Have a great week. Kia pai tō wiki.